Hello, my name's Stuart Morris, and years ago I was introduced to pranayama yoga, maybe about 32 years ago. And at that time, I was a young man. I'm 60 odd now. So at that time, I was a young man. I'd been diagnosed with a form of cancer. And after I had tumour removed and radiotherapy and so forth, I searched for another way in life to help me get through. And I was introduced to yoga, pranayama yoga. At the time, I remember going to the class, and there was all these women lying there, and I hid at the back of the class, and there was just something in that class that almost helped me get through a really difficult time in my life. And everything's a relationship, and it was like I'd just met this person, this woman, and fell in love with her, which turned out to be pranayama yoga. And I carried on with that for years and helped me to relax and helped me to find a philosophy in life. And then 3 or 4 years into that, my teacher asked me to train. And I taught for 10 years at Birmingham University in adult education. And it really gave me so much until one day I decided to stop teaching the physicality, the physical postures anyway. And the philosophy's never left me. It's an important part in who I am and helped me in so many ways. So I've never ever lost that. So this website, what you'll see below is a picture of Sunita and a picture of her tutor. So I want to tell you a couple of things that you might find interesting. So this is what I was told about Sunita Cabral at the time by my tutor. She said Sunita was a Brahmin and she had an arranged marriage made for her. Um, and unfortunately, she didn't like the man she was going to marry, so she run off. She ran away from the village, and the only place she could go was into a nunnery. So she became a nun for about 5 years, um, not out of choice because there was nowhere else to go. Village shunned her, her family rejected her, so this was the only place she could go. And during that time, she became a shadow of her former self and deteriorated, become lower and depressed and so forth, until one day the convent gates were open and she ran. And she ran back to the only place that was familiar, which was her village, and nobody wanted to know her. They all shunned her. And one day she was walking along the beach and she met her tutor there, her yogi, Swami, and he took her under his wing and taught her pranayama yoga in its entirety, which consisted of over 300 postures and various breathing exercises. And she became one of only 5 exponents in pranayama yoga in the world, as taught by Naraswami. So they all went off to different parts of the world, and Sunita came to England in the 1950s and brought pranayama yoga, which she kind of condensed down to fit into the Western way of life. And the yoga that you see here in this country and in the book and on the audios is as Sunita Cabral taught it. So there's first movement, second movement, third movement, but generally people stay with the first movement for about 2 or 3 years. And it teaches you a way of life. So it teaches you a philosophy, some breathing exercises, some postures, all kind of designed to ease the mind towards peace and relaxation. So what do you see on this website? You're going to see some interviews from 1 or 2 people, 1 or 2 teachers. You're going to see a link to classes that you can join. You're going to see the original book that Sunita wrote. It's the only book that she ever wrote, and in that it has some pictures, the breathing exercises, and there's an audio MP3 that you can download that accompanies the book. And if you're interested, I'll suggest that you do that as well. There's the slip second, which Sunita said was the most perfect form of yoga, where you detach your mind from 3 main areas of your life: your family, your friends, and your relations, and work, and any other stresses in life. So she talks through this perfect form of yoga, called the slip second, where we detach 3 times a day. And then you've got a philosophy that you can, she talks through a deep relaxation that you can download. And then there's a class as taught by one of the original tutors who Sunita taught, called Elsa Freeman. So when I was young, I was really keen to learn a lot about the philosophy. And I heard about Elsa Freeman. I've met her a couple of times at some of the classes. And I was really nervous about going over there because she had this garden. I thought I'd do some gardening for her in exchange that she could talk to me about the philosophy. So I remember going over to this place and knocking on the door, and I said, I'm ever so nervous. I was really nervous about meeting you. And did you do your breathing? She said. And that was the first lesson she ever taught me. Whenever you're anxious, whenever you're upset, then breathe and understand even this will pass. So whenever you're anxious, your breath changes. When you're depressed, your breath changes. In fact, whatever state of mind you're in, your breath changes accordingly. So we learn specific breathing exercises that have influence on the mind, as well as do the postures. The postures have a psychosomatic response, in as much as certain postures ease the mind, um, release trauma, release stress, but you've got to experience it for yourself. So you can download all the audios, you can download the original book, or you can just look through the fifth book. You can join a class and you can research a little bit more about Sunita on this page, and a little bit more about the history of pranayama yoga. One last thing I'll add before I go is that it is the most gentle form of yoga. So there are actually over 200 different forms of yoga, and people get drawn to whichever form suits their personality. So for me, it was the gentleness, that non-pushing, non-forcing. Sunita used to say, when the body's ready to give, it just gives. And so that philosophy runs all the way through the postures and all the way through the philosophy itself of doing one thing at a time and living in the present moment. And all these things you can research in the book, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of join in one of the lessons at some point. So there's plenty of phone numbers here. If you want to get in touch a bit further, then do. And I honestly recommend it. Thank you very much. Bye.